Welcome into another episode of Behind the Glass Sports. If you're coming straight from the Sugar Bowl, just like the rest of us, thank you for joining us. And what a beatdown of the Bulldogs that was by the Catholic Catechism of Catching Balls. Obviously, some things to break down, but the main objective tonight is to have sort of a post-mortuary look at year one of the Kalen DeBoer era in Tuscaloosa. Now that it is finally all said and done, before we get into it any further, gentlemen, how goes it?
Goes good. We have officially made it to 2025. So just glad to flip over the calendar to a new year. Everyone's gonna sit here and say, "New year, new me." I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. Uh, Try to fix some things here and there, but just take every day as it comes and enjoy this life that we all get to spend here on Earth.
All right, all right. Will, are you feeling as philosophical this morning or this evening?
I'm always feeling philosophical, Aiden. It's all about what are the astute observations that you can pull out of your backside at any given time, right? And the new year brings a perfect opportunity for some of those. But more than that, I'm focused on this slate of college football games, the remaining bowls. I still have a little bit of college football to hold on to before the long drag of the off season, and then the grind of SEC play and basketball at the same time. So there will be a lot to cover in the near future. So the machine never stops. The world doesn't stop turning. No doubt about that.
That is until the end of softball season when we enter the dark ages in college athletics. Although there's plenty of summer portal activity to track these days, the folks at the Supreme Court making sure that the content machine does in fact never sleep. Do we want to start out with the 4 playoff games that we've just wrapped up, or should we get straight into what was, quite frankly, a fitting end to Alabama's season?
I'm fine going either way. But seeing as how it is we have officially wrapped up the one of, I guess, stranger years, filled with ups and downs for Alabama football. I figure we should go ahead and hop into that game. Crimson Tide lost New Year's Eve. The Michigan Wolverines started and ended 2024 with losses to Michigan. People love to point that out on Twitter. Of course, it's just a fun little fact. This time last year, we didn't really know where the program was going. We thought, we'd still have Nick Saban. We had just come up, made it to the playoff. Whether, they should have been in or not, doesn't really matter. And we were like, okay, Milroe will be back. We expect some things to get better. And then by the end of the month, everything just completely flipped on its head. And, I don't want to say that it was a disappointing year, with getting a coach in Kalen DeBoer who has been a winner everywhere he's been, who made, the national championship game last season. That's a major flip for the Alabama program, getting him into the locker room. And then, as the season went on, there was definitely some ups and downs. But I think Blake Byler kind of phrased it perfectly. He said that this ReliaQuest Bowl was a microcosm of what Alabama's season was. Everything that, the turnovers, the battling back, fighting, getting back into an opportunity to win the game right there at the end, just to, kind of blow it away. It's, something that this Alabama team definitely struggled with throughout the year. And, I expect good things moving forward. We'll see how they do in the transfer portal. A bunch of guys have already decided to enter, but, hopefully that this coaching staff can get some things back on track and they can try to find themselves in, this expanded playoff field. And we've already seen a handful of teams make it further than I really thought they would.
I think and it's not a year that you look at and feel good about. You had a lot of guys underachieve. You saw something out of this Alabama team that you have not seen in a long time, and that was playing down to competition in a terrible way. You saw something that you have seen a lot of over the last few years, which was an apparent lack of synergy between coordinators and players. You saw frustrating schematic choices. You did see inopportune turnovers, things of that nature. I mean, this was a disappointing year. It certainly could have been so much more. And you look at who this team lost to. I think those points come into focus a lot more. Um, I don't think anybody. Well, I say that, and it's probably not true, but I don't think a lot of people expected a national championship necessarily. I think a lot of people wanted to be in the college football playoff, and certainly thought that with the roster of this team and the talent that was a possibility. Definitely not a sure bet. Just the losses that were actually reflected in the schedule weren't the ones that a lot of people had penciled in, which always throws a wrench into things. It was very mercurial as football seasons go, high points, low points. Certainly Georgia was a high water mark in that game, underscored a lot of the problems of this team in its own right. Obviously, some of the lowest points that the program has faced in literal decades. So it had a little bit of everything. I don't think that there's any reason for alarm bells necessarily, but you don't want to have too many more of these.
If I did want to point out somewhere that I do see maybe not an alarm bell yet, but a reason to make sure the electric's working on the alarm bell for the very near future, it would be the fact that you look at Kalen DeBoer's past, and the last two stops at the highest level he's been at were 2 years apiece. And now, granted, he took Washington to the college football playoff and to the national title game. But there's an open question about long-term ability to develop talent. And obviously in the transfer portal era, that's something that's very hard to do because you can't really bring blue chip guys in and sit them for a year or two or three like you used to be able to do because they're going to leave. They're going to get offers to, go play at Memphis for $6 million or something stupid like that. Just whatever. And they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go through practice for a season or two and leave. But I think you saw evidence this year that maybe there's a degree of cause for concern with regard to that, in the fact that some of your best players didn't take the steps that you expected to see from them. They came out and looked good, but not necessarily any better than they did the season before. Obviously, the most glaring example of that being one Jalen Milroe, who a handful of hours ago declared for the NFL draft. I think much to the celebration, perhaps, of many Alabama fans not having to be in the quandary of a position that Texas might be in with Quinn Ewers. Do you see him go to the portal or do you see him go to the draft? Because, you can't really – for them, it's not that you need to do something else. It's that you can't not go to the guy behind him. But this stunning lack of development with Milroe, I think, sort of underscores, the lack of big leaps forward that, you saw with the running back room. Didn't really take a step forward. You didn't see the tight ends take a step forward. You didn't see Deontay Lawson take a step forward. You didn't see most of the DBs take a step forward. You saw stagnation. And in the Southeastern Conference, when you stagnate and you don't add to your game and you play the same way as you did last season, that's just extra tape they've got on you. It's just more predictable you are. That's a lot of what you saw defensive coordinators able to do against Alabama's offense this year. Is they knew what was coming. They knew how to make guys make a mistake, and they knew that guys weren't going to adjust to making those mistakes, and they would make the same ones over and over again. And again, ReliaQuest Bowl, as Blake Byler said, a microcosm of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, I don't completely agree, but definitely to some degree I do. There were a couple of guys that definitely took some steps forward this season. Jahad Campbell looked like a all SEC linebacker. Q Robinson looked really good before going down with the injury.
That sucks so bad.
Yeah, very very unfortunate situation. We saw, and a lot of these young guys that came in got better throughout the season. Once they got a few more reps under themselves, they started to do a little bit better. Guys like Ryan Williams looked great coming like immediately out of the gate, and I wouldn't go so far to say that he developed a lot during the course of the season because he came in as just that good, and then more teams started to key in on him getting the ball on 50% of the pass plays, and so they were just completely tried to eliminate that part of the game. Some of the offensive line, definitely struggled in and out throughout parts of this season. Like to see which one of these guys kind of picks it up for next season. Caden Proctor's very he will be back. Elijah Pritchett probably going to be back. Tyler Booker's gone, but who's going to fill in some of the gaps from the standpoint of these were the most productive guys we had on that offensive line. Curious to see if the coaching staff decides to try to bring someone in from outside, or if they just are more willing to try to develop the talent in-house. For the running backs, it was hard to develop them because they just flat out weren't used. It's not as much of and when they did get the ball, more often than not, they looked pretty good. Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, when they were running the ball effectively, they looked as good as any running back in the nation. Problem was they just were not getting the ball at a rate that a lot of Alabama fans in particular are used to seeing, especially with just the long line of running backs that have passed through the university since 2007 and have been highly productive players. I don't want to say that era of Alabama football is gone, but looking back at the season that DeBoer had at Washington previously, they didn't really run the ball a whole lot. It was spread offense, and we thought him coming in would be able to take Milroe to the next level. And you look back, and he has games where he's looked great, other games where he looks like he hasn't developed one little bit. Excited, curious to see where this team goes moving forward. Losing a couple of big time leaders in that locker room. Malachi Moore, Jalen Milroe was a leader in that locker room. So I'm curious to know who's going to step up, really take on a lot of that responsibility and try to get through, I guess, what a lot of people are referring to as a rough time for Alabama football. And 9 wins for 99% of programs in the country would be a fantastic season. But when you're the team that's won, 18 national championships, it's hard to get by with just 9 wins.
That's fair.
I think one of the problems with Jalen Milroe was, and probably other people have pointed this out, I don't know how sure I am that he's any different than last year. He brought the same things over. One game he was Heisman caliber, world beater, and the next he was making boneheaded turnovers and failing on reads as if it was daddy ball at the kindergarten level. And he did all of this same stuff last year as he did this year. I've voiced my thoughts about Nick Sheridan on this program. I think he's out in front of his skis. I think it would be in the best interest of both parties to split off following this season, which now we're here at the end of the season. I don't think the mesh was ever there between those two, regardless of whatever media platitudes they were given in rehearsal each and every week. And that's a big part of it. I think the offensive line continuing to struggle was, a factor as well. Much like the offensive coordinator position, the offensive line coach position, you had to go to a second choice this year and already replacing Eric Walford, who had struggled in that role. I don't think that I think that unit was better but that's based on what you might expect. You'd expect Wilkin Formby to be better yesterday than he was on September 7th, or whatever day that was. You'd expect Proctor to be better than he was last year, and he improved a lot over the course of last year. I don't think the unit's done a remarkable job. The wide receiver core, talk about falling hard, falling fast. The Alabama wide receiver room, calling it a shell of what it was would be generous, I feel. I think I look at this roster overall, it's like, how many of these players can you say are like among the national elite at their position? It used to be everybody at Alabama was in that boat, and that's not really the case anymore. I think that's part of it, and you can't ignore that. The fact that has parity increased? Absolutely, but I think that Alabama has almost gone downward rather than increasing with it.
Well, I mean, such is the nature of parity. I mean, Alabama's been at the top, so just like Georgia, just like really those two right there. Alabama and Georgia have been at the top of the heap for a decade or so, and so with an increase in parity, parity is the average. It's a rise in the average level of play across everyone else, and that comes with, in a sport that has a limited talent pool and a limited degree to which everyone can do well. Everybody's got to win a game, and everybody's got to lose a game. The guys at the top are going to come down if the rest of the sea rises. That's just the nature of it. But nonetheless, I think, Will, you pointed it out on Twitter just today, or maybe you reposted somebody that did that. It's not the issue of NIL. As far as this parity increase, it's the issue of the being able to transfer and play immediately. And the reason Alabama's wide receiver room was at the absolute top of the country for so many years, and the reason that the linebacking core was at the top of the country for so many years, and the whole roster felt like it was a roster of world beaters, is because guys sat there and got coached up by Nick Saban, by by Cincinnati, by Kirby Smart, by you name it, position coach that should be a head coach at a legitimate program for a decade and 7 years, really a decade and a half. And then that changed. Guys are coming in, they're getting a year or two of coaching from these guys, and they're either leaving or they're getting that playing time and they're going to the NFL. So it makes sense to me that the roster isn't as otherworldly as it used to be. But I'm also not going to, take too much away from the roster. Like, I felt like maybe, I don't know if we ever gave Jeremy Bernard enough credit for how well he played, because Jalen Milroe didn't throw him the ball much. I don't know that Robbie Oots necessarily got the love that he should have gotten for how well he played, because Jalen Milroe didn't throw him the ball. I don't want to sound like I'm harping too much on Milroe, but I don't disagree that Nick Sheridan was out in front of his skis, but I have to wonder, with a different quarterback, with somebody who
is more of your traditional pocket passer,
doesn't seem like he doesn't think it stinks when he farts, is under center. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that phrase.
And it just goes on to just looking at how the development of this team is, the different offensive system, the things they've done since. Really, they've kind of been doing it for a while now, but getting away from going under center, running more traditional power run offense, running play action stuff out of that, hitting the big home run ball down the field off of that play action, and you have to establish a run game for it to work. That's the type of things that were not established. There was no rhythm, no cadence to this team throughout the entire season. Jeremy Bernard did lead the team in receptions. It didn't really feel like it. He started getting,
because his name wasn't Ryan Williams.
Yeah, he didn't. He started getting more touches down the stretch. only got in the end zone twice. It was just one of those things where everyone was kind of covering up Ryan Williams. And Ryan Williams, first half of the season, looked like one of the 5 best receivers in the country. The plays he was making at Georgia and this, that, the other, he looked fantastic. Excited to see what he can do next season with whoever the quarterback is going to be, because that door is wide open as of right now. But
Maybe it's
some of these
Quinn
other
Ewers.
guys, yeah, who knows? Maybe it is Quinn Ewers, but some of these other guys that were expected to be real contributors in that wide receiver room just didn't really either get usage or didn't show up when they were on the field. Kobe Prentice didn't look right. Kendrick Law caught the ball 10 times this season, which
I think
coming
that's
into the
about as many
season,
personal foul penalties he had too.
yeah, and coming into the season, we a lot of people thought Kendrick Law would be a big time contributor for this team. He just ended up not being, and maybe it was the system, maybe it was didn't really connect with coaching staff. I couldn't tell you. I'm not in the locker room, but moving forward into next this upcoming season, just got to really nail down those couple of things, because when they played big games against it was like a playing to their competition type of thing. Stepping up, looked great against LSU, Georgia, Tennessee. That was a completely winnable game. Looked great against Missouri, although it was Drew Pine playing quarterback. Beat the brakes off of them. They were looking good against South Carolina until we threw the interception right there at the end of the first half. It's just some of those things where it's just like, all right, don't, like, you're doing well against these teams. Just don't let your foot off the gas. Don't get complacent. Keep, putting pressure on them. And I imagine they're going to do so next season. More, as long as everyone is willing to buy into the Alabama culture and not the, and I don't want to sit here and sound like an 80-year-old man, but buying into the Alabama culture instead of just like going out there and playing for me and playing for what kind of, you can do that when you're playing professionally. Go out there, get your 1,000-yard season, however many receptions, get your bonus. Mike Evans is probably going to do it on Sunday against the Saints. I completely get it. College football, a little bit different. At the end of the day, not everyone can be, in position to go out there and win big time games. A lot of people don't ever get the opportunity to play in big time games. Everyone in the NFL is playing other NFL players. You could be some other smaller school in college football and never get the chance to play in a big time game. And, it's a huge opportunity, a big time honor. So you just have to take advantage of the moment and try to do your best to live up to it.
I think, individual players are going to underperform all the time. That's as much part of the game as any. I was particularly disappointed, though, this year in seeing some of the guys that did. Kobe Prentice barely existed. He transferred to Baylor, and a lot of people probably realized that was their reminder that he was even an entity on the team. He had the one touchdown catch. Aside from that, zilch. Kendrick Law, one of the best pass blocking receivers in the country, but that's not using that speed the best, that versatility the best. You saw Jeremy Bernard's frustration yesterday. I think he'll be one of the focal points next year, but he could have been more this year. And it certainly looked that way in the spring game, which I guess, in Alabama, you always can fall victim to the hype of the spring game, right? Justice Haynes looked like the next huge thing after that a couple of years ago and now, but and I think this offense not using the running backs is puzzling, but that's another subject.
I have numbers on that for you, Will, if you want them. All right. So last year, Jalen Milroe actually had, this past season, he had fewer carries than he did in 2023. He had 161 in 23, had 138 in 2024. But last season, 2023, they ran the ball 546 times as opposed to 479. That's 311 handoffs to running backs this year, down from 389 the year before.
I think that tells you everything. I mean, there are certain plays that are going to be a handoff regardless. You know, you look at the numbers and obviously you see a big difference, but I don't even think that takes into account certain plays that are runs just for the sake of being runs. You know, when you talk about like 1st and 10 from the 20 after a kickoff, you know, I mean, I think when you talk about a scheme and system that is designed specifically to maximize these running backs, both in the run and pass game, as both of the guys could do, that didn't really exist. And I think it was confusing to everybody. It's confusing to me. And that, you know, some places that's just how the system works. I just think with that kind of talent, you know, it raises eyebrows.
Well, and you know, you're seeing the example of how you can effectively use your running backs and establish what is effectively a ground game with a short yardage passing game in Washington right now. On the NFL side of things, like Cliff Kingsbury is running the air raid offense, old school. They're lining up, they're spreading out wide, they're going short and intermediate passes, they're doing dump offs of running backs, left, right, and center, lots of bubble screens, things like that. But you didn't, and so you could have done something like that this year with, you know, Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, and hell, even Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law, if you wanted to maximize the speed that those two guys have on the outside. But I don't think you necessarily had the type of passer that you were able to do that with, because you didn't necessarily have the type of passer that could read the defense and find where the seam was going to be, or have the patience to let the play develop a little bit before he tucked the ball and ran. And I'm sorry, but we got a full season of it. I'm going to stop saying necessarily. He didn't show me any evidence that he could read a defense this year. He didn't show me any evidence that from day one to day final, he got any better at reading the defense. And the skill was absolute zero, according to the naked eye through the television cameras. All right. So, I mean, yeah, you're right, Will. There are ways other than just handing the ball off, but like to just sit there and take shots from 1st and 10 on the 20 immediately after a kickoff, right off the rip, like your 2010 Oregon, Chip Kelly, whatever, 2013 Oregon, rather. You know, this is Chip Kelly's offense. Like, did that guy win a national title? What happened when he had to play an
I'd
SEC
point out
team?
2010 Oregon's running back finished second in the Heisman, so you know there are drastic differences.
But Michael James is a beast. Should be noted. Had one Cameron Newton not showed up, then the Michael James would have absolutely taken home the Heisman that season. But lost to one of the probably single greatest quarterback seasons of all time. What can you say? I mean, just Jalen Milroe. You know, a lot of people are gonna throw him in, you know, with the draft grade, stuff like that, as like a similar to what like Anthony Richardson is, what he was coming into the NFL draft. Difference is Jalen Milroe has started like 30 damn games for Alabama, a bunch of very, very high leverage games. I don't even know. Anthony Richardson might have started 30 games in his football career. You know,
to this point.
Yeah, and Jalen Milroe, you know, it is completely fair to assume that he's going to go out there in Lucas Oil Stadium and put up crazy numbers at the combine, because I don't doubt it whatsoever. He's probably going to look awesome. I don't, you know, and if you have a team that is willing to bench him for a year and try to develop him this, that, the other, go for it. You know, wouldn't use a first round pick on him. Someone may just do that. I don't see, if I were running an NFL team, well, that would be a dream, but I would not be taking Milroe in the first round. As you said, he's, you know, just showed a complete lack of ability to read a defense, has not developed that part of his game much whatsoever. We've known all along that he could throw a ball down the field. Half of the ones that he threw down the field felt like he was getting bailed out by one of the best freshman receivers in the country this season. It's not like they were all perfect throws or anything like that.
There's a reason he has such a highlight reel of acrobatic catches.
Yeah. And maybe it was throwing the ball to the only spot that he could make the play. If all of that was planned out, then shame on me. But I just refuse to believe that. He's struggled mightily. Don't want to say he's 100% the reason he lost us 4 games this season, but he played a very large portion of that with the turnovers that he committed. One former colleague of us said that no one was ever really giving Jalen Milroe a chance. And every time Jalen Milroe did something good, he would make sure to let us know that Jalen Milroe did something good. But he has been quiet in the larger part of this season with how poorly Jalen Milroe has been playing. And it's unfortunate. I like Jalen Milroe as a human being. I just don't think he's a very good quarterback.
No, and I think your idea of maybe you take him in the early to mid second round or third round or wherever you would be willing to take him if you were Xbox Live friends with Woody Johnson's sons. Wherever you would take him and sit him for a year or two to develop. I think that's a wonderful idea.
I think that he could do a better job than the Giants guy, because the Giants guy didn't re-sign Saquon. And
well, that's an all-around, every bit of what went on in that front office this past offseason, they should be ashamed of themselves. They did, however, draft Malik Nabers, and he's been awesome. So I will give him one pass. He gets one pass, but other than that, no.
Somebody get Jeff Pearlman to start writing the book now and let him know it has to be titled "What Not to Do." I think his attitude is shitty, quite frankly, and I don't think he would develop, because I don't think he's the kind of guy that you can tell he has to improve. Quite like straight up, every single time I have seen him take criticism publicly, there has been immediate extra talking points by people at the podium about blocking out outside noise and blocking out the haters and, got to listen to the people in the building, the people outside, true fans believe and yada, yada, yada. Bro, you sucked at times this year. You need to own that. And I don't think I recall a time this season that he did that. And this is a lot of my issue, what worries me going forward with Kalen DeBoer. He never stepped in and made it seem like, yeah, Four's got to get better. Four has to get better. That was never said. He never got benched, despite at times clearly deserving to, because we have seen Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson is no less effective than what Jalen Milroe was at times. And at some point as a coach, you have to, send a clear message to your guy. If you aren't going to improve, I'm going to give someone else a shot because this isn't good enough. And it never happened. So this whole true fans will believe, and, we're blocking out outside noise every time I take criticism and things like that. Like I don't think he's got the attitude to develop into a proper player. I think he's got the attitude to have a career track like Robert Griffin III. All right. Go on to Barstool Podcast and claim an entire fleet of media members got together and coordinated the same lie about how something went down in a locker room to make yourself look better.
It's a comparison to be made purely from an on-field standpoint to Deshaun Watson. And what I mean by that is this year with Deshaun Watson, there was a lot of discourse in the first half of the year before he got hurt, a long time before he got hurt, about how it is unfair to the other players in the coaching staff to keep sending him out there when he sucked as bad as he did and he made no improvements. And I'm not saying that Jalen Milroe was anywhere near that level, because that's not true. More often than not, Jalen Milroe didn't suck. But when he did, it was like stepping on a rake. over and over again.
Straight out of Tom and Jerry.
And and like when you have 3 straight turnovers, in the bowl game after you've already had the year spelled out the way it did, at what point do you start questioning whether the rest of your roster should get a different look in that game too, just because somebody else has through poor execution of the plays has played himself out of the spot? Is that fair? That's the question that could be asked.
Well, and a lot of
This is
coaches.
what happens when you're a player's coach and nothing more than a player's coach.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches use, if you don't make the college football playoff, a lot of coaches will use that bowl game as an opportunity to test things out for the next season. Jalen Backway played offense, whatever. We'll see how that plays out next season.
How many catches he have?
Not many, if any at all.
0 inbounds.
Yeah. If you're going to try to it's been a disappointing season, all that stuff, trying to end it on a good note is paramount to keeping control of the locker room, keeping control of the fan base that, it's been 1 year, but people are already starting to talk about maybe this Kalen DeBoer guy doesn't get it.
Me.
I think
I'm starting to. It's me.
I think he's going to be fine. We'll see how it plays out next season. I don't think I think he was just this season more or less just like, yeah, let's just throw out everyone who already started last year and, not really have that many competitions at any positions. And she's like, yeah, we'll just roll with this. Whatever, everyone's comfortable with this. That's cool. Hopefully next year he says, yeah, he realizes that he can't just roll out the same team that he had. You still have a bunch of very young, talented players. They're leaving daily in the portal as we speak, but you still have a bunch of them, especially on, in that defensive backfield. Some very good players in that wide receiver room. Just need to get more depth at that position. But you just have to, move forward with this, I guess. Milroe, at what point do you? Cam Ward checked himself out of the bowl game. He played a half, broke a record, said, "Yeah, I'm good. You got it." They lost the game. Sucks. But he knew he wasn't going to be there next season, so it's like, why not let this other guy get a chance to get some playing time in? And Michigan was missing a lot of their really premier players on the defensive side of the ball, and Jalen Milroe still looked piss poor in that game.
And Wink Martindale is like pinnacle.
He's really good.
He's damn good. But like that sort of defense that he ran is what you can expect to see at the NFL level. Maybe executed a little better than it usually gets executed. At
My
the
dad
NFL
pointed
level.
that out yesterday. Maybe he should be on this show. I'd pay to see that. But he mentioned to me two things. One, that the other thing being that he was listening to McElroy and Kubelik, which I am not a go-getter enough to get up at a sufficiently early time to make that a part of my repertoire. But he stated to me that he heard on that show that Jalen Milroe seems, according to them, incapable of making pre-snap reads.
Thank you.
That he only is trying to figure stuff out after he takes the snap. What are audibles? What are things of that nature? Obviously, they didn't call Peyton Manning the sheriff for no reason. What was he greatest at? He never threw the tightest spiral. Obviously, great numbers. He was a great player. But, he was also the smartest player. Tom Brady was cerebral.
He had 5,000 yards passing when he was 45 years old.
These guys did those things. Even middling NFL quarterbacks do these things. The highest paid backup quarterbacks do these things. Teddy Bridgewater does those things, and is pretty good at it, I might add.
Teddy.
But the point being, if he doesn't do that, he has no future at the position.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things that, the talent can take you far, but it will only take you so far. Your talent got you to be the starting quarterback at the University of Alabama, but will that talent be enough to get you drafted? Maybe. Earn you a starting spot? Not likely. A backup spot? If it's the perfect situation for a team that already has a quarterback that uses your skill sets, like a Baltimore or something along those lines, where you have guys that you're like, okay, well, you can already do some of these things. Let's just plug them right in. Maybe. But for him to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, I can't really think of a team that would take him and make him a starter today. That would be absolutely asinine, and that's the type of decision that gets general managers fired. It's the type of decision that owners make because he runs a 4.34 at the combine. They go, "Ooh, he's fast. We need to draft him," and they subsequently blame the general manager for drafting him, and they fire him.
And sorry, Jalen Milroe, Daniel Snyder doesn't own a team anymore. So
yeah,
I'm not sorry that he doesn't own a team anymore.
The Raiders have played themselves out of the top 3. That seems like the perfect type of Raiders pick to go and draft Jalen Milroe because he ran a great 40 time. And
they did draft Alex Leatherwood that one time. No one understands it. Good for Alex Leatherwood, by the way. This is not a side swipe at him. He gets first round bonus money. Awesome for him, but that doesn't make any sense to me.
It's so shitty because nobody would give him anywhere near as much hate online if he was a 3rd round pick like he should have been.
Yeah, no, I mean he was. I mean that franchise loves to overdraft, and they're probably going to have to trade up and to get either Cam Ward or Shedeur, and whoever's willing to make that trade is going to get a haul of picks. But again,
hey, gentlemen, there is on the bright side, there is a possibility that Colorado hosts the Winter Classic next year. Don't think it happens, but now that Shedeur and Travis Hunter are gone, they'll need something else to latch on to.
That is very true.
And ESPN also, they're in tears about this, I think. ESPN's probably like,
step in.
Yeah, ESPN's struggling with Shedeur and Travis not being there anymore.
Yeah, they're really lacking on the content.
Can I get you guys' take on this idea that you go ahead, because if you're the Patriots, you've got the number 1 overall pick. All right. So what you do is you go ahead, you fire Gerard Mayo, you hire Deion Sanders, you draft Shedeur number 1 overall, you trade Drake May for a top 5, Drake May and something for a top 5 pick, and then you take Travis Hunter as well.
Or you hire Ben Johnson like a competent organization.
No. Actually, he'd make a lot of sense with Drake May, that timing-based offense. And, Drake May is the youngest quarterback in the league and already showing signs of
he's good.
Able to be cerebral, in addition to having the ability to make off-schedule plays. This idea that the Bears should go and hire Ben Johnson is absolute lunacy.
It's not going to fix anything.
The best way to kill Caleb Williams' career absolutely and interminably, because Caleb Williams only makes off-schedule plays, and Ben Johnson's entire offense runs like a metronome.
Yep. To that point, no, I don't think they should get rid of Drake May. For the sole purpose, or for the sole idea that if you know anything about the fan base up in New England, I don't know if they would really allow a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders to come in, and they wouldn't really give him a very long leash.
Way to lay it on thick, Hardy.
Yeah, on his ability to perform on the field, especially after Drake May has performed very well his first season.
I wonder what he could be saying.
Give him some credit there. I went to that preseason game against the Patriots. There were a lot of Patriots jerseys at Northwest Stadium. I didn't hear any boos when Joe Milton came in the game.
Well, at that point, he wasn't ever going to be the starter.
Martavis Bryant legacy game.
Yeah. You remember how long the Cam Newton experiment lasted.
Oh, that was hilarious.
half a season tops. But it's just one of those things that no, I don't think they should trade away Drake May. I saw that fire Jerod Mayo, sure,
Yeah.
you can do that.
Also
hire
out in front of his skis.
Definitely do anything to get Drake May some help, because I just know if Jerod Mayo was still the head coach and they took Travis Hunter, they'd say, screw it, Christian Gonzalez, Travis Hunter, these are our two DBs for the next 10 years. And Drake May is still just going to have to suffer with Kayshon Boutte as his best wide receiver out there for the next however many seasons.
I mean, if they're going to let the guy go full Josh Allen, they might as well. But,
Josh Allen at least had Stephon Diggs, and he had some guys around him to help him out. To be fair, his first season was not as successful as Drake May's.
I just more mean, go ahead and, make one read, then put your shoulder down into a linebacker's chest.
Fair enough. Do we want to get into some of the playoff stuff?
Yeah, let's do that
before we get out of here. So looking back at the college football playoff,
Indiana and SMU, thanks for coming out.
Tennessee, thank you for coming out.
Oregon, thanks for coming out.
Oregon Ducks, thanks for coming out. Georgia Bulldogs, Boise State Broncos, y'all kept it at least closer.
Boise played
during
okay.
The fourth quarter.
They ran into a better team and obviously got outmatched. That score doesn't really, I think, tell you the story of that game as much as maybe some of these other, blowout games.
I agree. Boise State looks fine. It was just too many early mistakes, got down, and couldn't claw back enough. And
Penn State's game plan of just take Ashton GT out of the game was fairly effective. Let's just call a spade there. It kind of worked.
Yeah, it was like just put 7-8 guys in the box, play 1-on-1 on the outside, and they beat us.
Yeah,
and it worked. And when
it's
you got a guy like Abdul Carter,
in 2009.
When you got a guy like Abdul Carter, who's probably the best edge rusher in college football, definitely helps things out. But overall, not a lot of super competitive games.
Arizona State is your rightful 2024 Peach Bowl champion.
Cam Skattebo, rightful people's champion of college football.
Yes.
Clone of his father, not child of his father. Clone of his father. Oh my God! My jaw hit the floor when they cut to that man in the stands.
They're copy paste.
Literally.
Incredible stuff. But looking back, it's the first year that we've had this 12-team college football playoff. We've had a couple of games that were interesting entering the fourth quarter. The Texas Clemson game, Penn State Boise, Notre Dame Georgia. Indiana Notre Dame. It wasn't close entering the fourth quarter. Indiana just scored late to make it a 10-point loss. It just furthers the notion that, hey, maybe there really isn't 12 teams good enough to win a national championship. TV ratings, I don't even know if they were that great because they started the Rose Bowl early when the Arizona State-Texas game was still underway. So everyone was like, I'm not watching the start of the Rose Bowl right now. And by the time they flipped it over to the Rose Bowl, Ohio State was already up 2 scores. It's back to the parity thing. Definitely a more even playing field during the regular season, but when it comes to being the best of the best, only a few teams are actually good enough to do
it. And that's the train I've been on from the jump of this. I would have been fine with going to 8 teams begrudgingly. I wouldn't have had anything to say about going to 6, but in my opinion, it should have been kept at 4. We're talking about who is the best team in college football, not just, well, who earned the right to play in a more special game than everyone else. And this idea that there's 12 teams that can really compete for a national title to say they were the best football team in the country, complete fallacy, in my opinion, and was going in. And I personally feel vindicated by the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. The only other comments I really have on the first round of games, other than, screw you, Kirby Smart, for not beating Notre Dame. There's 2 things in my life that I root for even more consistently than the Washington Redskins and the Alabama Crimson Tide, and that's for both Notre Dame and the United States Naval Academy to lose. Okay, those 2 things.
First off, go Navy,
Army.
beat Army.
Nope.
Go Army, beat
Nope.
Navy.
Grew up around way too many Navy bases to ever say that in my life. Nope, not even them. It's their wives that ruin it for me. But targeting. It is a foul that is the same no matter the situation in the game. It's not like defensive pass interference or offensive pass interference or, is silly stuff like that or holding where, hey, maybe we take a little bit more of a let the players play approach when it's big spots in big games. We don't want to decide the game with a holding call at NFL. But this is a player safety foul. All right. This is something that has a abundantly clear definition that has been ironed out over the course of many seasons now. And it's a flag no matter what the spot in the game is. I thought Dillingham's eye roll after he had that call explained to him in the fourth quarter was a very contained reaction. If I was Kenny Dillingham on that sideline, I would have looked a hell of a lot more like Shane Beamer after Brett Bielema came over and pulled that crap that he did. Because that was one of the clearest examples of targeting I have ever seen. I get it. They didn't call it targeting on the field. But this is a reviewable play for a reason. And Homeboy, as a textbook defenseless player, mid-turning around, not has made a football move, but in the process of initiating his first football move after the catch, gets hit in the head with the perfect crown of the helmet in a violent manner on a javelin-like tackle. But because the big name, big market team would have had a damn good chance of losing the game had it been a 15-yard foul and first down from the Texas 37-yard line. In my opinion, we reviewed it and no targeting. If that wasn't targeting, take targeting out of the game and let a hospital ball be a hospital ball.
Yeah. Targeting is a foul that I think in general, probably just the nature of it shouldn't exist, especially at an amateur level. I think I saw a comment saying they need to have targeting in a manner that, the NBA has flagrant ones and flagrant twos. Like if you are actually making a conscious effort to launch yourself and injure somebody, you can get ejected from the game. We've seen too many guys, I don't want to say make incidental contact, but even a guy catch the ball and drop his shoulder or something like that, and he just happens to hit him in the top of the head, get booted from a game. Did I love seeing that tackle? Absolutely. Was it by definition a foul? 100%. I don't know what they have to do to get this consistency down, because the call has existed for 10 years, something like that. I think we're
pretty close.
Right about the 10-year mark of when they introduced the targeting call, and I still do not know week in and week out which one of these head-to-head hits is going to be called. I've seen shoulder-to-shoulder hits be called as targeting fouls before. I've seen, if it's, face mask to the side of the head, it's perfectly fine. If it's face mask to face mask to the top of the head, it's, ejection. I could not tell you, and, if go and I read the rules, all of them would fall under the category of targeting, and they all should result in ejections if you want to follow the rule. If you're not going to follow the rule, you can just throw a flag, just call it unsportsmanlike, or an unnecessary roughness. Ejecting players never, unless there was willful intent to harm. I never really thought it should result in an ejection. I've seen high school players get ejected from games for targeting calls. It's like, no, the kid just doesn't know how to tackle. He's not trying to hurt this other person. And so, they have to get it figured out some way or another. They're probably not going to. The playoff will probably have expanded 2 or 3 more times, and the NCAA tournament for basketball will be 100 teams before we ever get a solidified rule as to what is targeting. It's just my stance on it. But they've got to figure it out, because just too many games have been decided by, a big time player getting ejected or
suspended for the first half of the next game.
Yeah, or the call is just flat out missed, and because no one can agree on what the actual call is, and it decides the game.
Yeah, my thoughts on targeting. It was made to discourage flagrant, intentional head-to-head hitting. And because of that, the rule has overextended, I think, in a lot of ways. I don't know. Take the ejections out. They've changed some things around about it. It used to be that if the flag was thrown, you got the yardage, whether the penalty was overturned or not. That's no longer the case. I feel like there are other steps that could be taken. Playoff wise, 12 teams is too many. I do think the format will continue to expand. I find the Twitter scenario that people have been positing of 4 playoff scenarios in 4 years not only plausible but likely. And whether that will be to the excitement or chagrin of the larger college football universe is to be determined in the near future. But so far, the 12 team has played out about as I expected so far. Ohio State's a machine. Oregon got a crappy draw. Don't know how much it matters when you get blown off the field as badly as they did. Penn State got a great draw. You're seeing that. Good job, Notre Dame. They finally win a New Year's Six bowl. I'm surprised nobody's pointed that out yet. They finally did it. They've overcome this inconquerable beast that has hung over their program for the last, really since the dawn of the 21st century as a whole. And that's what I got.
But
shout out to Arizona State.
Bowl.
Shout out to Arizona State for going out there and proving some of the haters wrong, getting to a double overtime against a Texas team that everyone thought would, is one of the best teams in college football all season. If you point to teams like SMU and Boise State as examples for reasons not to include, I guess, quote unquote, lesser teams, Arizona State is a tally mark for the other side. Showed up, showed out. Dillingham will probably be poached. He's an Arizona State grad. And they
Dude was born and raised in Tempe. This is his dream job.
Yeah. Lady I work with, she's from.
It's also Lane Kiffin's dream job. If you guys catch my drift.
No, it's Joey Freshwater's.
That is the good
Joey
point.
Freshwater's dream job. But yeah, it's lady I work with. She's from the Phoenix area. Talked about she went to the game. She's a Sun Devil fan, all that good stuff. She was like, yeah, hopefully he wants to stay there long term. Arizona State will probably continue to extend him and pay him as long as he is successful. And for a program like that none of their fans thought that they would be in that situation, with the chance to beat, a Texas team that was, knocking on the doorsteps of being in a national title game last year, has aspirations of being back there this year. They didn't think they were going to be in that situation, and they showed up. They played very well, and shout out to them for creating what was probably the most entertaining atmosphere of any of the college football playoff games that we've seen to this point.
Well, I mean, double overtime. How could it not be? The other person,
And
I
I'm
wanna
not saying
commend on
just this season. I'm saying dating
Oh,
back to 10
yeah.
years ago when the playoff first became a thing.
No, that's more than fair. There is another person I want to commend here. We see alumni on the sidelines of big games and like homecoming games all the time, and we get the camera shots of them all the time. I have never seen an alumnus on the program of any program on the sideline during a game more freaking into it than Jake Plummer. Dude
Shout out
was
Jake Plummer.
having the time of his life, and it showed every time the camera was on him.
You gotta love it.
You do. I say that as somebody who, as a child, had great disdain for Jake Plummer, because by the time I started watching the Broncos, he was on the back end of his career. And I really cheered when Jay Cutler finally got sent in there, and that was before they diagnosed the man with type 1. So,
Jay Cutler's the man.
he is. Just
Best quarterback in Bears history.
still.
Still is. Some people will disagree with me.
It's Kyle Orton.
I mean, that trade, everything about it was so perfect. Both of those teams pretty much stayed the exact same. The Bears got like a little bit better. Broncos got like a tick better for a second, and then
Josh McDaniels, did his classic implosion.
Yeah.
And the best part is like that trade doesn't have to happen the way it did. Like Denver could have gotten a haul for Jay Cutler at that point had Josh McDaniels not come in there and like practically 5 minutes after wrapping up his opening press conference publicly stated, I would like to go sign Matt Castle and make him our starting quarterback. And so now Jay Cutler's like, well, F you.
Screw you, dude.
I want out.
Yeah.
Publicly. I want to be traded.
Yeah. It's only funnier that Matt Castle ended up in a division rival.
And then was a bum.
Yeah, and then did not play great. Man. But anything else to New Year's resolutions? Mine is to not get so worked up about this Alabama football team.
I'm still
see
working on that.
See if it lasts. Oh, and work out more, eat healthier.
Oh yeah.
My New Year's resolution is to grow a new pancreas. I've started a stem cell lab in my basement. The Planned Parenthood clinic has been selling me fetuses out the back door for me to harvest the cells from. So shout out Republicans.
You got to go to the back door. I thought I figured you could just walk up to the front desk.
No, I live in Maryland.
They don't do the 2-for-1 special anymore?
We have something called security cameras, and they get monitored.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have gotten that in Alabama. We have something called a power grid. It's also something Texas has never heard of.
No, they have not heard of one. We have them, I think.
That's a legitimate question in Mobile. It sounds like a little blustery day.
No, we have a power grid. It decides to act a little funny when a really big thunderstorm comes around. But where I live, we get power restored first because I live near all the government buildings and they can't lose all of their stuff.
That's my favorite thing about the house we just moved out of is we were on the same part of the grid as a hospice house. So
nice.
Priority 1, go us.
Gotta love that.
The other side of that coin is we also lived on a road that for some reason everybody couldn't figure out how to navigate a mild left turn and ran off the road and hit the power pole. So literally like 3 times a week.
I love that.
And they just still don't bury the lines. It's the damnedest thing. Welcome to St. Mary's County. So on that terrible disappointment, gentlemen.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.